and welcome to episode 5 of Attention Engineer. I'm Laura Kidd, and I'm a solo artist, producer and songwriter making music as Penfriend. Find me around the internet at Penfriend Rocks and say hi. The gift of someone's attention is priceless, so thanks for joining me on my quest to go deeper, past the headlines and the hearsay, to have the conversations I've always hoped for with some of the artists I admire the most. This podcast is supported by Arts Council England and the National Lottery, and powered by the Correspondence Club. More on that in a bit. Greetings from the Launchpad, my home studio in Bristol, where my lockdown summer continues. This attic room is getting warm. I hope you're keeping well and keeping going, whatever that looks like for you. After having launched my new solo project in May and this podcast in June, I've been getting into a new rhythm of working recently. And last week I shared a blog post about Facebook unfriending. I've been trying to look at how I use social media personally and professionally for quite a while now, inspired by reading Cal Newport's excellent book Deep Work last summer, followed by Digital Minimalism. I highly recommend both books if you're interested in finding out about healthier ways to use the internet, and I have to thank Cal for prompting me to start this podcast once and for all, and for inspiring the name. His new podcast, Deep Questions, is available now and it is really brilliant, so I highly recommend you listen to that. After reading Deep Work, one of the big things that stuck with me was the idea that if a social media service is meant to be a tool, then we should assess whether it's the best tool for the job, whatever we decide that job is. In my case, a few years ago I started saying yes to whoever added me as a Facebook friend, because I thought perhaps it could be a good way to spread the word about my music projects. But that ended up making Facebook practically unusable, because my feed was full of junk, really, from people I didn't know. Now, Facebook posts aren't necessarily junk when they're from someone you do know, but sometimes they are still junk. Anyway, Facebook wasn't working for me as a tool to stay in touch with actual friends, and I started finding the idea of being directly connected to so many strangers really weird. I started wondering where this drive to collect people came from, and why I've basically subscribed to the life of, say, someone I met once 8 years ago and never spoke to again, seemingly forever. Weird. This week I reduced my friends list by about 2,500 people, and today I basically left, leaving my email address behind in case anyone really needs or wants to get in touch with me. I already feel calmer, to be honest. That tool just wasn't for me, and now I feel like I've reclaimed a bit of headspace for all the other things I'm up to, which is a lot of other things. One of these things is my monthly secret podcast, The Voicemail, which I'm sending to Correspondence later this week. I'm in the final-ish stages of putting together the first Penfriend album, so I've been listening to demos and working out which songs to finish off, which ones need extra bits recording, stuff like that. So I'm looking forward to sharing some snippets with my people very soon, and then getting on with turning those snippets into finished album tracks. Hooray! Sounds easy when you just say it, but it's fine, I have a plan. Now to this week's excellent guest, rock royalty Charlotte Hatherley. Charlotte is a composer, solo artist and guitarist who initially came to prominence as guitarist and backing vocalist for alternative rock band Ash. After leaving Ash in 2006, she recorded and performed extensively with artists including Bryan Ferry, Bat for Lashes, KT Tunstall and Birdy. Most recently, Charlotte has toured as musical director for critically acclaimed South African artist Nakhane. A truly versatile artist herself, she has written for film and stage, and inspired by her love of science fiction, her fourth solo album True Love was released in 2018. Her soundtrack for the powerful film Imogen was released in May 2020. I've been a long time admirer of Charlotte's work, so this was a very exciting chat for me. We talked on Tuesday the 24th of March, which was the first official day of UK lockdown, and we did it over the computer. Thank you to Charlotte for recording very beautifully on her end. Here we go. Hi, Charlotte.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm all right. How are you doing?
Where are you?
I'm in Bristol.
You're in Bristol. I love Bristol. I'm in London. I'm at home. I'm good, actually. It's the sun's out, even though I can't really go out. The sun's out and my window's open, and it's actually quite nice to be at home.
We should probably say that no one's technically supposed to go out today. It's the first day, isn't it, of a quite serious lockdown?
I think I can have my one exercise trip a day.
Yeah.
I think I might do that after this and get some sun. But I'm also 6 months pregnant at the moment, so I have the double whammy of being sort of high risk at the same time as going through this weirdness. So it's kind of like, double anxiety and paranoia. But I am in quite a suburban part of London, so it doesn't feel like if I leave the doorstep, anyone's going to cough on me. I think I'll be fine.
What's the best survival skill you've learned in the last 2 weeks?
Well, I've got to say, having been in a band for 20 years is pretty good preparation for this scenario. Because not much has changed. I mean, thank God I'm not touring.
Yeah.
If this was happening last year, I really, really would have been screwed. But because I've sort of moved away from touring and I'm doing part-time teaching and I'm just writing at home. So really, except for the 2 days a week of going to the college, this is like every single day. And my partner is a freelance journalist and he's at home anyway. So I think I've just like the skill of going with the flow, which most self-employed people have to do anyway. So having that like really active period followed on tour or on a project followed by complete empty diaries and blankness. I'm quite used to that feeling of insecurity. And I've sort of learned to deal with it and be like, well, it's going to be okay. And it's really shit. And obviously this is really shit. But there's a certain robustness, I think, being a sort of freelance, self-employed musician.
Yeah.
That it just sort of buffers you. And also I'm not sleeping very well because I need to go to the toilet about 10 times a fucking night at the moment because of the baby and probably because I've got a very weak bladder anyway. And so I'm kind of in this perpetual state of just crazy creativity but being quite exhausted and stressed, and I'm also used to that because that is the touring lifestyle of existing on broken sleep and a tour bus and just being generally jet lagged or befuddled. So I feel like I'm pretty equipped for the apocalypse, and I've watched a lot of dystopian films. I'm quite obsessed with Mad Max, so psychologically I'm fairly prepared.
I just read a novel called The Last by Hannah Jameson, and it's about the end of the world.
Oh, shit.
And I read it about 3 weeks ago, maybe 4 weeks ago. It's really gripping. It's a brilliant novel. And I just keep thinking about it going, well, at least I've learned something from that book, just in case. And also, it's a similar amount of time of touring and living in enclosed spaces, not seeing the light very much. It's
exactly
useful tools for life.
Useful tools for life. And also like being flexible and adapting, which I think like musicians these days, the most adaptable people. Mm-hmm. And this is a situation like, especially like taking everything online. So I'm teaching guitar and songwriting lessons online now, which I probably wouldn't have done, but actually it's a great way to do it. And just sort of being able to sort of just be a bit of a blagger is part of the musician's makeup. Yeah, which is quite handy for these times.
Agile. It's a nicer word if you'd like to use it. Ingenious and agile.
Yeah, okay.
Those words. I've got some questions. I'll ask you some if that's okay.
Sure.
How would you introduce yourself to a stranger at a party?
You know what? I'd probably say that I was a teacher rather than a musician. So when I get into a taxi, even if like with gear or guitars or whatever, I really can't be bothered to get into an exchange about music because they're always like, so have I seen you on telly? And I'm like, no, I'm not that kind of musician. So yeah, I generally avoid introducing myself as any kind of like anything interesting.
Yeah.
Go in boring, and then you can only things can only get better.
That's a really good way of looking at it. I asked that question because it's quite a telling one, isn't it? If someone says that they announce themselves and all of their achievements to this poor person who just said, "How are you?" What's your purpose in life, and when did you figure that out?
I think I've always known that music was going to be my path, even when I was like 10 or 11. In fact, I wrote something at school, which is like my musical biography.
Amazing.
It was all about how I was going to be famous, and yeah, I kind of practiced my signature, and I was pretty like focused and convinced that was what was going to happen. So yeah, and I just never really deviated from that path, thank God. I mean, there've been a few moments where I've thought I better do something else, and I kind of flirted with other career paths, but you know, I feel amazed that I'm 40 and I'm still managing to make a living from music.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
I was just so impressed that you started your first band when you were 15, is that right? Night Nurse?
Yeah.
I started mine maybe when I was 16.
Okay.
16 seems so young to me now. And I just think, how did I know anything that I would want to do?
Yeah.
But I did. It was all I cared about. So I love meeting people who are the same in that respect.
Yeah, I look back on me at 15 answering an ad in the back of the Enemy, and I'm like, what the fuck? Like the balls on me, and the obsession really with music that has never really peaked as much as it did when I was 16.
Yeah.
I mean, it was such an epic, intense time, and it was in the midst of Britpop, and music industry was like absolutely booming. And yeah, I just went for it, saw an ad, went for it, and then that was it. That I was off. And yeah, I really admire that, because I don't know if I would do that now. I mean, obviously things, it's just that feeling, those feelings of like intensity towards music and that love of discovering new music. I don't know if I have it at quite the same level. Like, I can easily not listen to music now. I'd rather listen to a podcast or watch a film. Mm-hmm.
It's
that sort of passionate love affair with it has definitely waned, although I still write every day. So yeah, in a way, I sort of really idealize those teenage years.
Yeah, but I feel like they're the years when choice was so limited in terms of what you could spend your time on things you could consume. We couldn't watch whatever film we wanted.
Yeah,
we couldn't go on the internet and find anything useful. I used to go on the internet and get pictures of Damon Albarn and print them out in the computer room. That's basically what I used the internet for. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So it wasn't very useful. So like choosing the music you liked and telling people about it as well. It's kind of it was like, this is my personality in this sort of playlist, we'd call it now.
Yeah, definitely.
But you had to go and get the stuff. You had to go buy the things and bring them home.
Yeah, I remember because I was really, really obsessed with Paul McCartney, and then I was obsessed with David Bowie, and I really remember being quite aware of the fact that no one else was into that music, and it felt quite, you like old men, old man music, and they kind of equated David Bowie with like Rod Stewart,
wow,
or Phil Collins. And then it wasn't until Britpop happened, and then there was the front cover of Brett Anderson and David Bowie in the Melody Maker, and then suddenly I felt like, see, I'd been talking about this for years, and really felt like people thought I was really quite odd and weird. And then it all sort of came together, and it was a really beautiful thing. And then also the thing about those years is just like having shitloads of time to just sit and play guitar and practice. There was nothing else to do. I had very strict parents, so I was never allowed like out. And I would just read books and play guitar and learn music and listen to David Bowie and obsess and get the Enemy, Melody Maker, and it was like there just seemed to be a lot of time, and now there's just no fucking time. Or you spend that time online, and I feel like it's not time well spent.
I feel like there's less intentional time now, but of course we've all got control over it, but it doesn't feel like it sometimes, and it's hard to break patterns and habits and obsessions with technology. Doing this, I'm miming scrolling, if for anyone who's listening and not wondering what I'm on about. It's a weird thing. I mean, I'm interested to hear what music people come up with, because younger people, they've got access to everything, so they can be inspired by so many different things that have nothing to do with each other. So I think the music they're going to make is going to be fascinating. It's just different, isn't it?
Yeah, it is different.
And you must see that teaching them, obviously.
Well, you'd be surprised. I've been surprised by how retro the musical playlists are that the students listen to, and the greats, are still the greats, especially with the guitar students. The boys still want to play like Jeff Beck and Eric Clapton, which I was really surprised about. And the singers are predominantly female, and really it's Amy Winehouse and Adele, and it's actually quite obvious the choices. So I still feel like, even though they've got all the everything open to them, you still have to go on the hunt for alternative music, or I feel like I have to introduce them to certain things. And there's actually one student who's really lovely, who told me that the best band he'd ever seen was Status Quo.
Oh my!
I thought you were 18 years old. Like, what's going on?
Wow.
Yeah. So there's kind of like experimentation, but I don't know if it's completely coming through, like in terms of music choices.
I mean, I like that they're going back to the source though, rather than going, I love whatever band who are a rip-off of the band they really should maybe listen to see where it came from. I think that's cool.
No, that's true, because that was the thing with Britpop. Actually, a lot of that music, if I listen to it now, it sounds like shit. It does not hold up. The production's terrible. And they were all pastiches of these originals, like most of Blur. And even, when I heard Wire, I couldn't believe that Elastica and Blur had got away with it.
I know.
It's incredible.
I love Elastica so much, but then I had that moment as well of going, wow, like these days, I just don't think you'd get away with it.
No, I don't think you would. And I think there is a lot of like mainstream pop, like Billie Eilish, who actually listen to the production value. It's actually really experimental and quite odd and unique. And Billie Eilish is actually a huge influence on a lot of female singers, the young singers. So
that's great.
Rather than having that big Adele voice with sort of dodgy pronunciations, everyone's singing like this now.
That must be weird though.
It's just funny how you see it directly influencing, like in real time.
It's brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant.
It's very sweet.
That is sweet. But that's what we do, isn't it? We imitate and then we find our voice.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But you had to do that pretty quick, because you went from playing in Night Nurse, and I feel like Night Nurse were doing well.
Yeah.
And then suddenly you're playing, was it 50,000 people at V Festival with Ash?
Yeah.
How did that feel? Aged, what were you, 17?
I was 18.
Oh, grown up then.
I was a big girl. Night Nurse, we did like the London circuit. Never played outside of London, but we did have a record deal that I signed, and then when Ash came along, it was a really difficult choice. I know, like on paper, it seems like an obvious choice, but at the time, it was very hard. And eventually, I sort of decided to go for it for a number of reasons, and within a few days, it was V97.
Wow.
And I had just scraped through my A-levels, and then did V97, and then that was it. I was off for like, the next 8 years. So it was very surreal, and probably I really struggled to access my mind at that time. I think I was just probably completely overwhelmed, and didn't really understand what the hell was going on. Yeah. Really. like no idea how the future was going to unfold. I think I just wanted to get the hell out of school and leave home, and it was like, the best invitation to a party you could possibly get at that time.
Of course. I remember first seeing you doing that and just being like, she's so cool, this is awesome. And it's really nice to see someone doing something that I wanted to do, who was, who I could conceive of myself doing that because I could see. I'm sort of skirting around the woman in music bullshit question because I don't ask that question.
Yeah.
But we are both women.
Yeah.
And I didn't have female role models to speak of in terms of music.
Me too.
And you became one of them because it's just like, whoa, that's great. It's really hard to see yourself in a role if no one's inhabited it that you could, that you might be able to identify with, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I was just talking to, funnily enough, Charlotte Cooper from the Subways for this podcast I'm doing. And we were talking about bass playing like heroes. And of course, when I was growing up, Kim Gordon, Kim Deal, Melissa Aftermer, Darcy from Smashing Pumpkins, and then there was Elastica. So, and it seemed like there were like all these amazing, cool female bass players. And then one of the first proper tours I did outside of Europe with Ash was the Big Day Out Festival in Australia. When I was 19, and Hole were playing, I think, and Melissa Aftermer was playing in the band, and I can't remember her name now. The drummer for Hole was
Patty Shemmel.
Incredible. Yes. Yeah. I remember seeing them do a club gig in Sydney and it really blowing my mind, and also at the same time seeing PJ Harvey playing. And so these were all sort of women who were like filtering through. But in terms of like being, like, I never really had any like guitar heroes. I just wanted, my hero was David Bowie, and I loved all the guitarists who played for David Bowie, like Carlos Alomar, Robert Fripp, and all the others that forgive my brain. So it's interesting to think about like role models because, I guess I just there was no one that I thought I want to be like her.
Yeah.
But there did seem to be an abundance of female musicians around that whole Britpop era.
Yeah, definitely.
Maybe predominantly singers, but they were around and they had attitude.
Yeah, it was a really cool time, I think. Helped me.
Although I guess the American scene, it was kind of a little bit before Britpop. It was like the whole Riot Girl thing, and that was kind of really what I looked towards, like bands like L7 and Bikini Kill. They were so cool. And then I guess later on Sleater Kinney sort of picked up that baton, and actually touring the world and going to places like Portland, Seattle, and it was kind of, I never felt like I was on my own. I felt like there was always like a gang or a community. And I guess now it's easier to find that community because everything's online.
Yeah.
But you think about, all the effort and love that went into those fanzines and those little scenes, those communities, like the Washington scene, the Portland scene. And actually, I've the fact that I was able to travel the world and sort of travel from, reading The Enemy in London to actually being a part of those scenes and playing those legendary venues was quite amazing.
And did you enjoy it and appreciate that at the time, or is that in retrospect?
Yeah, I think I did. I think I was pretty like overwhelmed the first time I went to America because it's so iconic. Like every place that you go to is so iconic. And obviously of course, like you can never really sustain that interest. But even when I went to Berlin, I sort of, found David Bowie and Iggy Pop's flat. And,
so cool.
It was sort of, with these like pilgrimages.
Yeah.
And I suppose, when you're a teenager, I'd never left London really. So it kind of felt like, these places were inaccessible. But then when you travel and you tour, that's kind of like the most wonderful thing about touring really, is that you get to go to these places and, it's all very romantic.
I like going to a place with a purpose. So I've always preferred to go when I'm playing a show than just like...
Yeah.
And also, I guess they're the places, the sort of in-between places sometimes where you wouldn't really plan a trip to. I'm not going to say, I don't even know a name of town. I woun't want to diss a town and its entire inhabitants, but you wouldn't necessarily go there.
Dortmund.
But there's something beautiful everywhere, really, I find.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And that's... I've had, even a day off where... in America where there's literally nothing but you have to cross a motorway to get to a mall and that's your day off. You'd kill so much time in a Barnes and Nobles, or you'd buy loads of books or you buy CDs. I come home from tour with like so many CDs and books, and also like rolls of film.
Yeah.
So I had a camera, and I would just take photos all the time. And I don't know, there's this sort of collectability of that time that doesn't happen now. Everything is much more, is immediate and less, the hunt isn't quite as exciting.
Yeah. Have you ever put those pictures together in a Charlotte Hatherley's View of the World book or something? I'd love to see that.
Yeah, I dug some out. I put them on Instagram actually, because as I approached 40 last June, I sort of had a bit of a like freak out and looked through everything and reassessed. And I put some of the photos, I scanned them and put some of them on Instagram.
Oh, cool.
There's some really, mostly of just like being with Ash and on the road and in America and Japan, and then a few solo ones. And then, I guess for the last 10 years I've done session work, so playing with lots of different artists and having like just so many photos of like Kate Tunstall or Birdy or Natasha Khan, and in like random places of the world. And one day I'll do something with them.
Yeah, that'd be great.
If anyone cares.
Well, I don't want to harp on too much about you playing with other people, because you also write brilliant music on your own. But is there a part of your musical life that you feel most comfortable in and most you?
I really don't. I don't know about that one. That's an interesting question. I suppose with the solo work, it's never really been like my number one project or priority, for various reasons, really. But the session work has sort of took over the last 10 years and involved compromises towards the solo albums, because quite simply, to make a living, I need to play with other people, and then that funds my solo work, but then I have to go and tour with other people to then make that money back. So I've never really been truly able to invest in it. And then I do wonder if that's really just because it's not, I'm not 100% comfortable with being a front person. I wouldn't really say that my heart is in being a solo artist, although the last record I made I'm really proud of. So I think maybe I am much more comfortable in a collaborative role, and I like MDing, musical directing, and I love session work because you're sort of in a supportive role, and I like being to the side of whoever I'm playing with, and being like a solid, reliable member of a band. I love that feeling. I don't know. I just kind of love having a community and love having people around me rather than sort of carrying stuff on my own. Although at the moment I find myself in this sort of world of composing and writing music library music, which is really solitary. So this whole shutdown, I'm just kind of working like I would always work, which is upstairs in my sort of attic studio, and I'm writing on my own, I'm producing, I'm mixing, and it feels like a lot of work, and I'm not completely sure that I'm amazing at all of it. But I'm doing it all, and I get to the point with that where I'm like, I really just want to have these sort of collaborative feeling of having a band. I think just having a band is the best thing. I think that's where I'm the most comfortable, really. And I used to play the drums, and I gave it up to play the guitar, and I kind of think actually the drums is probably the most suited to my personality of all the instruments, and maybe I should have just stuck with that. Just sort of at the back, dependable at the back.
Well, there's plenty of time to
well, I can't quite see it happening with the young baby, but we'll see.
Maybe not with the bump either. Might not be the most comfortable thing.
It's I've been banned from lifting things because I sort of a few weeks ago I got this new keyboard. It was fucking huge, MIDI keyboard, and I carried it all the way upstairs And then just thought, I'm just going to rearrange my entire home studio, and lifted loads of stuff and really ended up in A&E for the weekend.
Oh no.
Yeah. And the nurse, because the nurse was like, have you been heavy lifting? And I said, yeah, I just rearranged my entire studio. And she's like, don't do that again. So my boyfriend has banned me from lifting like guitars or anything like that. I just forgot, because I'm just like, God, I feel fine. But then you're like, yeah, shit, I have a baby and I shouldn't be lifting stuff. It's just part of my like DNA is flight cases. heavy gear.
The fun bit of gigging, the best bit, the lifting.
Well, yeah, the fit bit of gigging.
Let me see. Other questions. Oh yeah, so I've got a question for you from our mutual friend Charlie Stone.
Oh yeah. This will be good.
Who is a music legend in her own right.
Indeed.
This is a brilliant question. So I'm going to play it for you. I've listened to this about 5 times and pissed myself every time. So here is your question from Charlie Stone.
Hi, Jazz. This is Charlie Stone. My question for you is, do you agree that B7 is the most irritating chord on the guitar? Because it is.
Okay. Yeah, I kind of do agree. I can't think of any instance where I've used B7. I'm trying to think. In fact, I try to avoid sevenths in general. I'm more of a ninth girl myself.
Very interesting.
But in terms of annoying chords, sure, I'll go with B7. Fine. Although the transition from, in fact, I've got a guitar right here. Bit of B7. Yeah. Can you hear that?
Yeah.
It's quite annoying, isn't it?
It's a bit smug, isn't it?
Yeah. It needs to be resolved to an E major, which is it's too pretty. It's a very pretty, it's a very fruity chord.
Mm.
And I got told off for, I had some like string arrangement lessons, and I got told off for using sevenths, too many sevenths. And actually it did make me feel like Paul McCartney, and I've always wanted to be John Lennon. And I was trying to write like sort of atonal discordant stuff. And my teacher Audrey was just like, you've got sevenths in there all the fucking time. Take them all out. And I was like, oh, okay. So it's sort of been drilled in my head that sevenths are bad. And yeah, I think B7 is probably the most Paul McCartney chord of all. Maybe.
So why Lennon and not McCartney?
Because there's this irrepressible upbeatness about McCartney, and a sweetness that I have, and I've always wanted to be like a bit rough and ready, a bit more David Bowie, a bit more like weird and wonderful and discordant, but I just really struggle to write music like that. Everything sort of ends up quite pop and melodic. So yeah, I'm trying to just like embrace my inner Macca.
No
I just
shame
love
in
him
that.
so. Like, I honestly love him so much.
He's amazing. I met him once and he was so nice.
Being. Did you
It was
really? How did you
amazing.
meet him?
I met him because I was doing some filming work in Montego Bay, Jamaica, randomly. And I was at the airport, and the woman who I'd been working with for the previous week came over to me and said, Laura, you've got to come with me now. And I was like, whatever, fine. Followed her to the bar, the airport bar, where Paul McCartney was standing there with not very many people,
God.
just like him and maybe someone else. And his little girl was there, actually, his little kid. And
Yeah.
I'm no word of a lie, the bar staff were calling him, they thought he was someone from the Rolling Stones, and so they were just like using the wrong name, but they knew he was someone they knew and who was famous, and he was just like kind of,
Yeah.
I think he was looking for anyone to talk to rather than be in that awkward situation. And we just sort of stood near him, and I thought, this is just going to be my story. I stood near him. That's enough. I'm not someone who's going to go, Paul, I love you, Paul. Or I play bass too, Paul. Like, I'm not going to be that person. So my story was I stood next to Paul McCartney. That was enough. But then because he heard me and this woman talking, he just turned around and he's like, all right, girls, do you want a beer?
Wow.
And we were like, yeah, sure. Thanks, Paul. And he probably just liked that we knew he was Paul, not whoever else other people thought he was.
What the hell?
We had a beer with him. It was amazing.
Wow.
I still didn't get a chance to go, I play bass because of you. Because technically I play bass because of, Kim Gordon. But, it was cool.
I can't tell you this. I'll tell you this after.
Okay.
I'll tell you something
Tell
after.
me some secrets later.
But, yeah, once upon a time, LIPA, the Liverpool Institute of Performing Arts, had sort of offered me and Tim. Well, no, Tim got in touch and said, I'm doing this thing at LIPA. It's like a, I don't know, visiting professor or a masterclass guest thing. Do you want to do it with me? And I was like, no, not really. And then because he'd done it a few times, he got invited or he got asked to be an honoree or a member, something like that down the line.
Yeah.
And got an award presented to him by Paul McCartney himself.
That could have been you.
Totally could have been me. And that was a lesson in like, all right, I should probably say yes to things. I could have met him then. And then I saw him at some awards thing and he was absolutely inundated with people.
Yeah.
And in a similar way to you, I was like, there's no way I'm going to go over. But he was really tall and just like had this unbelievable aura around him of just someone who's been famous for like the longest of times. And it's just such an amazing person.
What bonkers life he's led.
I would love to meet him.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd love to meet him again and be like, I've made music too. That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah. Listen to my songs. I was sort of obsessed with him and Linda and my idea of having like a touring family, of like having kids. I just kind of thought he was like the greatest dad ever. And the way that they took their kids on the road and had this like total hippie life, living on the farm. Everything about it, I'm completely signed up to. Except now I live in Finchley.
Yeah. Didn't your hero David Bowie write nice things about your song Behave though? Isn't that true? Is that a true story?
Yeah, well David Bowie I did meet because we supported Moby. It was Moby's tour. It was called Area 21 or Area something or other in America. And I was like 21 years old. And we were asked to play, and then Bowie was headlining it, and it was a touring festival around the States. And so on the very last day, he was watching a band at the side of the stage during the afternoon. We were first on and like really early, and I never really expected to, like, he would only really turn up later. And then towards the end, we were playing, and I looked at the side of the stage, and David Bowie was stood there. And honestly, I just sort of fell apart and I found it actually quite disorientating and quite weird to be that close to him. And then I saw him watching a band at the side of the stage, and I forced myself to say hi, and I got a photo taken with him. And I'm really glad I did that. And he was very sweet. And I was like, I'm a really big fan, blah, blah, blah. But I walked away from it unable to visualize his face. I couldn't compute what I had just been in a conversation with him.
Yeah.
Couldn't remember what he looked like. It was all like a mad days. And I actually was quite bummed out by the whole experience because I kind of just thought, I kind of wish I'd never met him. And I don't know why, it was all a bit weird. Anyway, and then he wrote this review, allegedly wrote this review, and I know his press guy, Julian Stockton, who was his press guy at the time, he was a friend of mine. And the week before Bowie died, so Black Star had come out, and I hadn't listened to him for a really long time, and I started to get back into his music, listen to the records that I really loved again. And I found the photo that I'd taken with him from this tour. And I thought, why is this photo in the photo album? This should be on the wall. So I took the photo out and I put it on my desk, and I was going to get a frame for it. And then a few days later, he died, and I got back in touch with Julian, and I said, thanks so much for hooking up that review. I don't even know if he did hook it up, but thanks for being there when that was happening. And I said, did he really write it? Because there was language that he was using. Like I think he signed it off saying, "I still love you, the girl from Ash," and said something like, the language was weird, and it made me think, I don't think David Bowie wrote that. But Julian was like, no, he definitely wrote it.
Wow.
So I'm choosing to believe that he wrote it.
Yeah, I think it's okay to believe a nice thing happened to you and he loved your song.
Yeah, and he said really nice things about the song, and he was, by all accounts, a real consumer of he was a passionate music fan and was always finding new stuff and championing new music. So it's definitely the kind of thing he'd do. And so it was kind of, very sweet and very, very special for me, because I would say, as much as, I love Paul McCartney, David Bowie has probably been the most influential person in my life beyond parents.
Yeah.
More so than my parents.
Well, I'm so pleased you got to meet him. That's lovely.
Thank you very much.
It's weird, like the things that sometimes it feels like something that should be so exciting is it didn't go right or something. I mean, I stood next to Thurston Moore once. That was fun. But that's another one of I'm standing next to him. I have nothing to say.
Okay.
Even though he'd just seen me play. So it was at Meltdown Festival. I was in Viv Albertine's band playing bass at the time. It's completely legitimate. I could have said, "Hi, Thurston," but I really had nothing after that. "Hi, Thurston." No, that's it.
Wow.
I didn't want to be that person, because enough people will be like, "Hi, Thurston. I'm a musician." I don't want to be that person.
Yeah.
Ever. Even at my own gigs.
I know what you're saying. And with someone like Bowie, you just get the impression that he's met everyone there is to ever meet. And there's no, Tim sort of came up to me during one of the afternoons. "Oh, you just talk to him. He's really friendly." And I was like, I can't just talk to him like he's a normal person, because there's just so much of a relationship that is all in my head. And there's just no way that it will ever be reciprocated or understood. So it's best to just leave it, I think. So hang on, you were playing with Viv Albertine?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for a few years. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Oh, wow.
It was really cool.
Nice.
She is brilliant.
Yeah, I've read her books. She's super cool.
Yeah, her books are really incredible. I'm just sad that the gigs were before the books, because I feel like we always got good audiences. People absolutely love her. But I feel like she could have gone and done, not necessarily bigger if she didn't want to do bigger gigs, but like more and more gigs and be more appreciated for her music than perhaps I don't know, I can't speak for her, but then perhaps she might feel she is, if you see what I mean. Because her solo album she did is incredible. And I hope that people have at least checked it out since they've read those books. I
moved into a flat in Tufnell Park, and Gina Birch from the Raincoats was my landlady.
What?
It was so cool. But the Raincoats were sort of getting back together, and they were rehearsing in the house, and she was painting and blah, blah, and I think like Viv Albertine is, well, they're definitely like friends. And the Raincoats are still going, and in fact Gina's like constantly touring and doing stuff, and it seems like that was a really like something to aspire to just still be going with that original punk riot girl attitude, like in your 60s and 70s and beyond. It's so cool. It's so inspiring.
Yeah, I find that too. Sometimes I feel like I don't want to skip the next 20 years of my life, but I kind of think ahead to, when I'm 60, 70 and I've got long flowing grey or white hair like a witch or whatever, and I'll still be playing my gigs and it'll be great. But then I feel like I could just embody all of those things that I think I'm going to be then, maybe now, and enjoy that now. And that's fine too. Don't have to wait.
Yeah, be both versions. Be the fully fledged witch version of yourself that you want to be.
Yeah.
Now, that's a good It's a good thing to aim for.
I think so.
That's what I'm trying to do.
So do you think you're going to be touring as an old lady witch?
Well, I don't know. I don't know about that. I sort of have a love-hate relationship with touring, where the last bit of touring I did, actually a lot of amazing things did happen on that tour, but I definitely felt like I needed a break. And then as soon as I stopped touring, I got pregnant. So I think that was kind of where I was heading.
Yeah.
And just sort of needing the next stage of my life to not be about touring, because I kind of, you know, hitting 40, starting to think of like, you know, in 10 years time, where do I want to be? Mm-hmm. Because I think with music now, you have to take the long view. It's like things are so different. And moving into teaching has helped me understand that, you know, it is a more regular and secure lifestyle is possible. Because I think if you get into that thing of touring all the time, a certain kind of musical lifestyle, it's extremely hard to transition out of it. And I think I started to get quite fearful that I was going to be, you know, some alcoholic sort of rock chick, sort of unable to sort of move on. And I mean, which is a horrible cliche, but I think a lot of roadies that I've been touring with were like, yeah, well, you're never going to settle down and this is your life. You love it. Have a bottle of vodka. And I kind of just thought, actually, no, that's actually not what I want at all. I've always known that I wanted to have kids, and I've always sought out security, even though it's been like hard to find. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I kind of managed to help to make that happen. So I don't know with the touring. I don't know, like maybe I'll completely miss it and have a baby strapped to me and make it work. I know lots of women who can make it work, or maybe I'll just sort of have a little break and see what happens. Like if I get asked to do something super cool, then it would be very hard. But I don't know. It's a weird one. I don't know. I think having a baby is going to obviously affect me in ways that I can't even begin to imagine right now.
Yeah. I think it's good to not define oneself as one particular thing, and just to see how that will grow and develop. I was talking to Frank Turner for this podcast last week, who you worked with last year, I believe.
Cool. Yes.
Lovely man.
Yes. Yeah, lovely man.
Yeah, he's great. And he's talking about the thing about he had this bravado of I'm a road dog and I'm always on tour and that's who I am. And then he started kind of unpacking that and thinking, well, that's cool and everything, but that's not the end of everything. It's not the be all and end all of who I am as a person, what I want to achieve, what lifestyle I want to have. It's not giving up to then be able to get a house that's comfortable and not drink every day or whatever. Yeah,
I completely relate to that. I think when I was single, I had a boyfriend most of my 20s, and then most of my 30s. I was single throughout my session work. And there was a definite romanticism of the life on the road, and it's lonely. Yeah. No commitments. I'm in a bar in Barcelona and I can do whatever I want. And there was a sort of detachment and fear of commitment and all this stuff that you end up, you know, you have one breakup too many, you start to think, maybe it's me.
I definitely had that. But I'd written several albums about it by that point.
Yeah. Oh God. And I don't know, it just gets boring. You just start to think, I'm actually a much better person for finding stability, and I'm much happier. And life can be as challenging off the road as it is on. That's what I've struggled with, is the constant stimulation of being on the road, and everything's, all your responsibilities are sort of on hold. But actually starting teaching and throwing myself into composing and all these new things that I've decided to sort of explore as an alternative are just as challenging. They're just as scary. Like teaching a class of like 18-year-olds for the first time, I was absolutely shitting myself. It was the same as doing a gig, really. Yeah. And I think people struggle with the boredom that's associated with not being on tour. But I guess I've just always been quite self-motivated. Like I couldn't sit around for too long doing nothing. So I would truly that's when I start to sort of fall apart mentally.
Yeah.
I just like to be busy and do stuff. And I think it's come at a time where, fortunately, my experience is valued, and that feels really nice, because to be 40 and to be like, yeah, I've been doing this for 20 years. I don't have a degree. I don't have any qualifications, but I can teach and I can help. And I think that's been a really amazing thing for me, to realize that with age comes a certain level of experience that is respected and needed and wanted. And that feels really nice.
That's very heartening to hear. That wasn't all a waste of time then.
No, it wasn't a waste of time.
Good to know.
I was very good at touring. I was good at it. And I am good at it. I think a lot of people aren't so good at touring, but it really suited me down to, yeah, I love that lifestyle. I really do. It suits me a lot, but it can't be forever, that sort of thing.
For me, it's the repetition of things that gets too much.
It's repetition, and it's the there's not much room for like personal growth on tour.
Yeah,
it's like, every time that I go on tour and I say I'm going to write something on the road, or I'm going to read all these books, or I'm going to do this, it actually never really comes to anything. It's not like you have a lot of time to sit around and to potentially improve yourself as a human being, but actually you don't do that at all. Well, I didn't. Found it very hard. So yeah, I think after a certain amount of time you do feel like, well, I'm not really learning anything new here. It is just the same old thing. But then I think being a session musician is a different thing, because actually you're playing with lots and lots of different creative people all the time. So it's actually, that is quite stimulating. And every person you work with, you learn from, or you make new friends, you make new contacts, you have a new guitar set up. I think the session world is very seductive. Anyway.
We've reached the part of this podcast where I stop just for a minute to say thank you to the Correspondence Club. These are the people powering all of my musical and podcasting activities, supporting everything I do, and this is your invitation to join us. The Correspondence Club is my totally independent, handmade, kind of hybrid between a Patreon and a crowdfunding campaign. So it's a way for people to support what I'm doing and stay really involved in the creative process. There's a whole range of free and affordable paid tiers available, with loads of different member perks to choose from, and everybody who joins, free or paid, gets access to my really brilliant friendly online forum and a bunch of free music. So come and check it out at penfriend.rocks/join. And if you're listening and you're already a correspondent, thank you so much. You're ace. Now, back to my conversation with Charlotte. How do you feel the internet has impacted your career?
The first time it really impacted my career was in an incredibly negative way, where when I left Ash, I was 26, and I had released my first solo record, Grey Will Fade, when I was still with the band on the manager's record label. And it sold like 15,000 copies. And my logic was, when I left, I'll do another record and it'll sell 30,000 copies. But of course, the whole industry crashed in that period. And actually it sold 5,000 records, but I had printed up a bazillion vinyls, B-sides, 7 inches, remixes, like just fucking madness.
Eek.
So yeah, that was the first sort of experience of like, right, the landscape has changed and technology is now, I see my life as a musician. The time with Ash, there were no laptops, there was no internet, there was no Pro Tools, there was nothing. And then my time after Ash, every single project after that has been very integrated with technology. And then I guess fast forward several years, and the last record I released was via Pledge Music, who unfortunately then they collapsed after that, but actually it really worked for me. I released it totally self-funded, independently, and I made my money back for the first time. And I guess I have a social media presence. I'm not obsessed with it, but I I use Twitter and Instagram and to a lesser extent Facebook to sort of promote. And I think more than anything, especially now, like I was saying, the way that you can just sort of contact people online now is so incredible. Like I had this idea for my last solo record that I wanted to move into film composing, so I deliberately made the music very cinematic, and I made a video with a film director, and it was very science fiction, and it was very cinematic, and put it up online, and someone from the European Space Agency direct messaged me on Twitter and said, we do loads of collaborations with musicians, do you want to do something together? And now his name's Mark McCaughrean. He's the senior advisor, I think, at the European Space Agency, and he is now a good friend of mine.
Wow.
And through that just online meeting, I went on to play this big music festival called Space Rocks, and that was the first gig I played my last solo album, and we've done some collaborations together. So anyway, that's just an example of a way to use those online sort of contacts and like specifically target people that you want to collaborate with, and as a tool for collaboration. So like this week I've been in touch with 3 different music library writers, and we're going to do some collaborations. I've not met them ever, but we've just been in touch through social media. I think it's become more and more increasingly part of what I do. Absolutely. I do miss the days of like having recording studios, and I miss having budgets to go into a studio and make a record. I'm not a huge fan of working remotely on my own, but I think there's pros and cons to all of this stuff. Is kind of how I feel about it. And now, the teaching, so at the college, because of the whole virus thing, everything's gone online. So now I'm teaching online, and I've actually started teaching guitar lessons and songwriting via Skype online, which is like a continuation of what I was doing anyway. And I kind of thought that would be quite an awkward process, but actually it's not at all. It's it's a bit jerky and there's a time lapse, but you can still learn and teach and make it work for you. And I think that's, if anything, I'll come out of this whole experience with a different business plan, a different way of working. And it's quite handy to know that does work, especially as I'm looking at working from home much, much more. Anyway, that was a very long answer.
It's a very good answer. Thank you. It's just really interesting. I find it fascinating. That's why I've named the podcast this, because I feel like I think it's good to be aware of what's good about the technology we're using and what's not, and what's in our control and what's not.
Yeah.
And just, I think it's an interesting topic of the day, really.
Well, that's what I'm trying to get like the message out to students, especially the female students, of like, because technophobia is a really big problem.
Yeah.
It's just so empowering to understand how this stuff works, and to even the way that I can set up, because initially when I was doing the podcast, I obviously was going to go and meet people face to face, and when that became obvious that wasn't going to happen, this whole like, oh God, how am I going to do it? And then you figure out a way using technology, and everything initially seems quite scary, but actually it's easy, and a program like Ableton Live might seem really intimidating, but it's an easy, creative, fun tool to just make music. It's not serious. So I think, all this, it's interesting to be using technology with my mum now, who's 78 and lives on her own on the other side of London. I can't see her. Is trying to get her over that fear as well, of like, it's no big deal to like sit in front of a computer and Skype. It's like, why is it so trauma inducing? There's just so much fear around it.
Yeah.
So I think if anything, this will sort of, because that is the future. The future is going to be augmented reality, VR. People would just be working from home. I mean, there'll be less jobs anyway because everything is becoming automated. So maybe this is just a little sign of the direction that we're going to be going in anyway. And musicians do have to adapt to anything that that can make money because the system's really stacked against you. It's inherently fucked. So I just think you need, like you were saying, versatility. What did you agile? You got to be agile. You got to be able to work with the stuff.
Yeah. It's nice to see everyone realising that Skype and Zoom and online gigs exist in the last couple of weeks, but this stuff's been around for quite a few years, actually.
Yeah, it would never, ever really have crossed my mind to have done that. But it's, all these platforms are there.
Yeah.
And like I say, like yesterday, there was Michael Price, a composer, has set up this composer's coffee time. So at 3:00 every week, by Zoom, you can join in this like network of composers, like who are there to mentor you, really, to give you advice. And then this morning I had those tutorials on how to like make your studio work, and it's all out there. It's all out there for you to get, and now it's not behind a paywall. So I'm just trying to sort of soak up as much as I can.
Yeah,
but I also understand that it's a really stressful and anxiety-ridden time for a lot of people. So to sit here and say, use this time to learn is probably quite annoying.
Well, it's hard, isn't it? I mean, my days are kind of, I sort of get myself all G'd up, do some exercise, maybe meditate, whatever, write in my diary, do all the good things, the nourishing good things that I need to do to get myself on an even keel to try and write music anyway. So do all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then as long as I don't look at all the awful news till maybe mid-afternoon, I can get some stuff done.
Yeah.
And then I have like a awful downer, bit of a cry. Then I just sort of try and do the same the next day. I think that's how I'm approaching these weird times personally. And yeah, you're right. Like it's easy to say, well, just do an online course. But when people are worrying about their immediate financial future and their health and their families, of course, it's not as simple as that. But it is nice to have some distractions too. And if you can, then yeah.
Yeah. For me, it really is distraction, because the first thing I do in the morning is I check Twitter, I check Instagram, I check Facebook, I check The Guardian. And then, I sort of go about my day, and it's got like just all these things to do. But then, the last 2 hours of my day are spent online doing exactly the same things, like looking at Twitter. And it's kind of, I don't know. I feel like I need to I can't spend too much time thinking about it, because I'm already like shitting myself about having, like, in 3 months' time I'm going to have a baby, and I am so unprepared and in so many different ways. And then on top of all this, to be like, I don't really know when I'm going to make money from.
Yeah.
Is like, it's too much. It's too much for me to handle. So I'm just like, well, I'll do my podcast, and I'll do this, and I, like, short-term goals.
Yeah.
To like, at least get a feeling of crossing stuff off a list.
Well, that's why that online course stuff is pretty helpful, I think. I'm not sure when this is going to be broadcast, this episode, but I really hope that the world's in a better state then. Fingers crossed. But we just don't know.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, I keep thinking, like, because the baby's due at the end of June, I'm like, I'll be fine by then.
The thing is, we can't, we wouldn't be able to get through the day if we really took on board like the horror of everything in the world. Like we can't deal with that.
No.
So we do have to kind of plot our own little path, I think.
Yeah.
Let's get through the day without hurting anyone.
Definitely. And I think, you'd be amazed by how much like goodwill there is out there in the world. Like people are genuinely want to help, and even just to like be on my neighbours. Like my neighbour, I've been here for 2 years, completely ignore everybody, and within like 2 hours of being on this WhatsApp group, someone had dropped off a sort of a baby car seat, and someone's given us 2 gates for the stair gates, and I'm like, it's just crazy. It's just, people are so sweet and lovely, and it's kind of made me think that there are more important things, really, than B7.
It is smug as fuck, though, that chord.
Yeah.
Might make a t-shirt that says that. That's what the world needs to heal, I think. A B7 t-shirt. What are you most proud of that you've made, that you've put into the world?
Musically,
Anything.
I think the thing I'm most proud of for myself is how I've just sort of kept going, and at times really in the face of adversity, and sort of came out of it releasing my last solo record, True Love, which I really do think is the best thing that I've done. And I'm glad that I didn't just sort of, I wasn't happy to be Charlotte from Ash forever.
Yeah.
I've always sort of pushed myself and tried really hard to do something really, really great. I was quite obsessed with doing something really great, and then the last 10 years I've decided that was completely the wrong way to go. Like, I read this amazing John Cage book. He was really into Buddhism, and he was just like, you can't ever expect to be great. In fact, you shouldn't really put judgments of terrible and amazing on anything. Everything is just, deserves to exist.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of have tried to sort of take that pressure off myself, and this extreme perfectionism that I always had, and which kind of ended up making me very unhappy. And then at the end of it, sort of released a record when I was 38. That is kind of the best thing that I've done, and I'm quite happy to leave it there. Really, in solo world, I'm happy to leave it on that record, or at least, like, if I put out anything after that, it's going to have to be really, really, really good. So I think that's my, career-wise, I'm proud that the most valuable thing that I've contributed is the most recent.
Yeah.
And I'd like to keep going. I'd like to keep going on that. I like to think that my best work is ahead of me, even though older. I know that I'm not old, but I'm aware that I'm older. And I think, maybe as women, there's more of a conscious awareness of like time. But I look at people like Patti Smith and Lucinda Williams, and I just think, yeah, I could do that. Why not? That's what I'll be doing. 50s, 60s, 70s, like, so what? And try to just keep it as exciting as it can be when you've done something for so long. I think that's the other thing. Sorry to just go off on
No, this is great.
The other thing with technology is it does keep it interesting. Like, I'm learning how to make like my synths work, and how to like use programs, and it's not like I plug in my guitar and a few pedals and off I go.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually like constant new challenges, constant new platforms to get your head around, and so I think that keeps it interesting for me.
Yeah. Wonderful answer. Well done. That was really interesting. Thank you.
Thank you.
What 3 songs of yours would you recommend to someone who's never shamefully listened to you? Probably Behave from The Deep Blue, which is on my second record, which is the one that David Bowie bigged up. Yeah.
It's just a very good guitar riff. It's all detuned. It's some weird tuning that I sort of made up, and I love that song. I think it's a good song. And then definitely A Sign from True Love, which is the most recent one. And then actually after True Love, I did an EP of cover versions of songs that feature in films. It was like a cinematic EP. And I did a cover version of How Deep Is Your Love by the Bee Gees. I just think it's like sonically the best thing that I've done, and I think really sums up the kind of music that I'm into now, which is like not so synth heavy. I mean, it's lots of synths, but it's also bringing in the bass and the guitar, and because I sort of got bored with the guitar and everything went very synthy, but then for that EP I sort of realised that actually bass guitars put through chorus pedals are really fucking cool.
Yeah.
And mixed it all back together. So it's quite a mad version of that song, and the video that I did for that was in collaboration with the European Space Agency, and is super cool. So I would recommend Behave, A Sign, and How Deep Is Your Love.
Awesome. And speaking of artists you're really into, then the kind of music you're into now, what stuff is lighting you on fire that you would like to tell people about?
I think mostly the music that I've really been listening to a lot is soundtrack music. And I've been listening to the Uncut Gems soundtrack.
Oh yeah,
which is like this sort of, it's amazing.
That film was so disturbing.
Yeah,
it was heavy going.
It was really hyper, that film.
Yeah.
It was really heavy. The soundtrack's like this sort of Vangelis, like modern sort of Blade Runner Vangelis, beautiful synth thing. And then I've been listening to Grimes's new record quite a lot. I like that. What else have I been listening to? A lot of I've been listening to the Chernobyl soundtrack by Hilda. I will not be able to pronounce her surname. She's the woman who just won the Oscar for the Joker soundtrack, and she did lots of work with Johan Johansson. Actually, Johan Johansson's Mandy soundtrack is incredibly beautiful. But yeah, the Chernobyl, I don't know if you saw the TV program.
No, I haven't yet.
It's completely amazing. It's made up of it's mostly sound designs, but she went to lots of like defunct abandoned nuclear power stations and I think in fact she went to Chernobyl, she was allowed to go in.
Wow.
And she recorded all these, so the soundtrack's just made up of all these like sort of empty fucked up spaces and then just all this nuclear reactive sounds. It's very bizarre, but I kind of I listen to music as research really for my own writing. So if I'm doing soundtrack stuff or music library stuff, I sort of make my own playlists, and I don't listen to music for like enjoyment in the same way. Like my boyfriend always gets annoyed with me because he was like, should I put some music on? I'm like, do you have to? Do you have to? I just kind of like find it quite I don't know, a little bit distracting. And like sometimes when I'm out and about, like in a cafe, I just want to sit in silence, and I find music to be like this sort of oppressive. It's just there all the time.
Yeah.
Which probably makes me sound like really like the joy has left my life, but it hasn't.
My favourite thing to listen to at the moment is Birdsong FM.
Birdsong FM.
It's just I think it's an hour, maybe it's slightly longer than an hour loop of birds singing. It's so lovely.
How wonderful.
And I listen to it when
lovely.
I'm writing things. Not music, but if I'm writing, prose thing. I have the birds going. It's lovely. Highly recommended.
Amazing.
I'll send you the link.
Okay,
it's lovely.
That sounds delightful. Please do. Yeah. That's right up my street at the moment.
Was the book you were talking about, the John Cage book, is it the book Silence that you were talking about? Because I'd love to read that.
No, it's called it's called Where the Heart Beats.
Ah. That sounds like a song title to be stolen.
It's such... I probably did nick a lot of stuff from this book. It's called, Where the Heart Beats, John Cage, Zen Buddhism and the Inner Life of Artists.
Ooh.
And it's kind of... It covers like other artists, but it's kind of like the time when he moved to Los Angeles, and there was like a real sort of arty gathering. And then how he just sort of moved away from his early style into something very, very heavily entrenched in Zen Buddhism, and how he used I Ching, and which then went to really influence Brian Eno and David Bowie and blah blah blah. So it's it's a really, really beautiful book, and it really sort of helps me take the pressure off myself as someone who felt like I had to be achieving. And actually I sent, because I gave a songwriting class to someone, and I found this old John Cage thing. It's called 10 Rules for Students and Teachers. And rule number 8 is do not try to create and analyze at the same time. They are different processes.
Brilliant.
Which is very important. And rule 9 says be happy whenever you can manage it. Enjoy yourself. It is lighter than you think. And I think just to read him talk about how to not judge yourself, and how to, like, everything's an experiment, and if it fails, it fails. Like, who cares? nothing's a mistake. And also like the whole concept of like it's lighter than you think, because I think, you know, sometimes as musicians you can get so up in your head and everything can feel really heavy and important. And I think I was just at a time in my life where I was like, it was really kind of interfering with my ability to write anything at all. I was like sort of paralyzed myself, and just to take that pressure off and be like, this is no big deal, really helps. And that book was very, very influential for me, and the last record. In fact, without that book, I probably wouldn't have been able to have written the record. So highly recommended.
What's your next adventure?
Well, it's gonna be having a little bubba.
Yeah.
Is apparently the adventure of a lifetime. I'm having a girl as well, which is I don't mind telling the world. So it's really exciting. I mean, I'm still sort of in this work zone. I feel bizarrely creative at even like before this whole madness was going on. I hit like the middle bit of the pregnancy where I stopped feeling like shit. And I just like launched all these projects. So I'm going to finish this podcast project, which is interviewing lots of female musicians, and it's in partnership with the college that I work at. So with a future project in mind of like setting up workshops for girls to start using technology. And so I'm sort of getting on with that. And then I'm just writing music library things at the moment. I'll have an EP coming out, which is a music library EP, but at the same time it's going to be out under my own name.
Great.
And then just like trying to, you know, get into the mindset of having a fucking baby. It's weird. I just sort of going through my days, and then occasionally, you know, she'll kick and I'll be like, fuck, I'm having a baby. It's still, it's not quite sunk in yet. Yeah.
We've got a little bit of time to get used to the idea.
Yeah, got a little bit of time. I'm really excited about it getting warm. I'm so over being cold.
Yeah.
I want summer to come, and I want to probably like slow down a little bit and make sure my boyfriend's all right, because he's a freelance journalist, and so his work is a little bit precarious, and sort of just like, I don't know, try to like plan as much as you can. Which is the other thing, you know, it's like planning in this sort of environment is futile.
Yeah.
Which is where my years of being a session or a touring musician kicks in, of like, you just can't really play. There's not much you can plan. You're just waiting for the next, you know, job to come in.
Yeah. Well, look, it's a really weird time in our country and in our world. So thank you especially much for joining me to talk to me today. It's been brilliant. Thank you.
Oh, no. Well, thanks for asking. Thanks for asking. It's been really nice.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to press stop, but then I want you to tell me that secret.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember what it was?
Yeah.
Hold on till we stop. And I'm stopping my thing. Ooh, I do love a showbiz secret. But my lips are sealed. And thank you so much to Charlotte for agreeing to have this conversation with me. I was quite nervous as we hadn't met before, but she was so friendly and I really loved our chat. Thank you. This is the bit where hopefully you feel so inspired by what you've just heard that you want to listen to absolutely everything that Charlotte Hatherley has ever made, and all the things she talked about. Well, I've made that super easy for you. I've gathered together links for all the artists and bands and books and soundtracks we talked about in this episode on my website at penfriend.rocks/Charlotte. So please come and visit that page and let me set you off on a journey of discovery. I'm really looking forward to getting stuck into that John Cage book. That's all from me this time. Thank you for listening, and as always, your kind ears, hearts, and tippy-tappy fingers are much appreciated. If you enjoyed this podcast, I have loads more great guests coming up, so please subscribe for future episodes and consider joining the Correspondence Club for podcast extras, music, and more. Next week, I'll be bringing you my conversation with the one and only Tom Robinson, bona fide pop star, LGBT rights activist, and one of Six Music's warmest and most determined champions of new music. Until next time.